let's talk about the 49ers agreeing to a contract extension with Nick Bosa. Let me go ahead and share my screen here because Adam Schefter broke the news. I want to say it was yesterday. So per Adam Schefter, so a source has indicated Nick Bosa has agreed to a 5-year, $170 million extension with the San Francisco 49ers, including $122.5 million guaranteed by a wide margin. It will make him the highest paid defensive player in NFL history. So I'm just glad
Adam Schefter is like well known for horrible punctuation. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was like, by a wide margin. I was like, I guess it makes sense why he has terrible punctuation because he's trying to get it out as fast as he can, but look as professional. Yeah, he's just like probably got carpal tunnel and like fuck autocorrect. But I mean, he pays for Twitter Blue, so he could always edit it, but he doesn't have time for that. As a 49er fan, I'm just glad that this fucking thing is over. Like, it has really been like a very cloudy offseason, and there's just been so much negativity around the team. And this finally feels like, I mean, some of the clouds are starting to pass over, and we'll see if Nick Bosa is in shape and ready to go Sunday. I assume that he will be because Kyle Shanahan said that as long as he doesn't have a beer belly, that he should be able to go. And they asked him how many snaps he would get, and Shanahan said, "How many snaps are in a game?" So I just hope they don't run him into the ground a little bit too early. But I think they'll probably ease him in and get him in on some key passing situations. And hopefully Steve Wilkes has a pretty good idea on how the defense is going to look, adding Nick Bosa, since this is his first time being the defensive coordinator. But other than that, I mean, this is averaging out at about $34 million per year. And honestly, the way that Nick Bosa was holding out, I was expecting him to get more than $35 million per year. Right?
What's the second highest average per year? I'm assuming that's Aaron Donald.
It's probably Aaron Donald. Let me look it up.
I want to say he's at either 31 or 33.
Paid non-QBs. Aaron Donald's at 31.7 per season.
So if he is the second highest paid, and maybe it's somebody else, but I can't think of who that would be. I feel like 34 is probably right at, if not a little above, what I expected. Like, as far as resetting the market, maybe it's because it's defensive end and not defensive tackle. But as far as resetting the market, like usually these guys, they just barely jump the previous guy. But this one, it's like, it's $3 million more, per year. So it's a sizable contract, that's for sure. And I'm curious to see what Chris Jones gets from the Chiefs.
Yeah, so Chris Jones probably might get a little bit more on par with Aaron Donald because Chris Jones is more of an interior guy, and so is Donald. And, Nick Bosa is that edge rusher. So Bosa got like the Joey Bosa treatment, and, he reset the market. And I mean, Joey Bosa got signed how many years ago? So like with the cap rising and with inflation, this is kind of on par with that contract, I would say.
Yeah. One last point. Bosa gets a $50 million signing bonus. And of course he's averaging $34 million per year. Of course, that might be split apart differently per year, but $122.5 million guaranteed, right? So tell me, Josh, which deal would you rather have? Which deal is a better value? Nick Bosa or Max Crosby? And let me give you Max Crosby's numbers first. Max Crosby's deal was a 4-year, essentially $95 million deal. It was adding on to his original $3 million that he already had. So it came out to 98.98, his number, $1 million over 4 years. $23.5 million per year versus Nick Bosa's 34. $53 million guaranteed. bear in mind Nick Bosa has 122 million guaranteed, and his signing bonus was $50 million.
Mhm. So my answer for the better deal is none of the above. I'm going to go Brock Purdy, making less than $1 million per year. Now, I
That
mean,
helps.
yeah,
That helps.
I think clearly Max Crosby is like the better bang for your buck. Like, I don't even think it's that close. Like, the difference is $10 million, and they're pretty comparable players. It took me a couple years to admit it, but
Right.
just seeing the way Max Crosby has developed into this top tier pass rusher, I kind of
Yeah.
felt like Nick Bosa was that like from day one, and maybe Max Crosby was, but I was just kind of blind to it. But
No,
um,
I think Bosa was day one, and Max Crosby kind of came on. But yeah, it's a silly question. I was just doing it kind of to be a troll for a second. But it Crosby took a pretty very team friendly
it was
deal.
very team
Whereas
friendly.
whereas Nick Bosa was, looking out to reset the market, and I don't blame him at all. I do believe, and I've said it before on this podcast, I think he is the best defensive end in football. And I think Crosby's right in there with him. But
Mhm.
this makes sense, and I love Crosby's deal for the Raiders. So
Yeah, Crosby is absolutely a top 5 defensive end in football. Like,
yeah,
you could, I would say that the other names that I would have there, along with, Bosa and Crosby, would be Miles Garrett, T.J. Watt, um, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. Although Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa are a little bit lower on the list,
yeah.
but I'm talking about names that you could maybe include in like the top 10.
I know there's one other defensive end. I'm just totally
I'm
at a
blanking on
loss
it
of who.
too. That's why
Yeah,
that's why I went with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa.
yeah. But all else. Oh, Micah Parsons.
Oh, there we
Even though
go.
I mean
Yeah.
he kind of some people think he's a linebacker, but
He's
all
going
I
to
will
get
say.
paid next year.
Oh yeah. Last thing I'll say on this. It was never a doubt in my mind. Nick Bosa was not going anywhere. He's just you can't give up a player of his stature. This deal had to get done. Um, I think really I'm just curious how this affects the roster construction in the years following for this team. You know,
Mhm. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I forgot to write this down like as a topic, but I guess I'll bunch it in with this anyway. So there was also news that the 49ers restructured George Kittle and Trent Williams in order to clear, I think, like about 17 to 20 something million in cap space.
mm,
Um, and I found it interesting because the day before I saw like the cap numbers of the 49ers top paid players, and then Bosa obviously signed his 34 million per year deal. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, Trent Williams might retire in a couple years here, so that they might be able to not have to give that chunk of the cap to him. And then Kittle might be on the way out in a couple years, because he's just sort of aging, and he's got all these like lower body injuries, and it's just the way that football works. I think like the average football career is like 3 years, and if you last longer, you have a pretty good career in the NFL. Um, but one thing I'll say is them restructuring them, I think pushes their money down the line.
yeah,
And I feel like it's a very risky move. And the 49ers have to win soon, or else they're not going to be able to afford, at least with the way that the cap is currently constructed at its current, number. They're not going to be able to afford to add top tier talent to the team. So if you're aging, if your superstars are sort of on the decline, it's a very risky move.
yeah, yeah. The Raiders did the same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo actually, and I think it essentially makes his contract pretty well guaranteed for next season. Which I think it already, for the most part, was. But they cleared like $23 million in cap space for this season, and I was sitting there like, well, what for? Like, there's no way they were $22 million under the cap, you know.
Mhm.
But that's apparently what these moves were for, is to get above the cap before the season, and I guess be prepared to maybe sign other players throughout the season. So
Yeah, sign other players or be ready for a trade, because I think the 49ers are absolutely in win now mode.
yeah,
And you never know if a guy goes down and you have to replace them. So you just trade and have to be able to sign them.
yeah,
And then also maybe the 49ers maybe they restructured it in a way that a guy like Brandon Ayuk can get signed next season if he breaks out.